Anybody who likes the Elder Scrolls or Assassin's Creed who have a Switch are gonna play this game because it's very open world, similar to those types of games. And that's where I think it gets a little bit of flack from some Zelda fans, as we're kind of stepping away from what we're used to with a regular Zelda game. There's no more dungeons in this game. They replace it with shrines, and that's how you build up your abilities in the game. And it's really, it's just...
Nice.
You take a game that everybody knows and you adapt to it to what people are going to want to play today. I personally, having owned the game, and I have not yet finished the game, I find it very hard to play at times just because it tries to follow the regular Zelda style of a story, but then has this element of free reign, open world. You can do whatever you want.
Well, that's where it gets deceptive as this open world game, because while everything is pretty much open from once you finish the tutorial in the Great Plateau, you can't really go to any of the areas and accomplish anything, because you'll die from heat or extreme cold. You'll get killed by these way more powerful enemies, and you just won't have the arsenal or the health to withstand any of the elements.
Yep.
So that's where, to me, it becomes more restrictive, because then you have to go to one of 120 shrines throughout the game if you want to have any hope of surviving, because you slowly, for 4 that you complete, you can get 1 heart container. So you very slowly build up.
And I feel like, what is the point in even doing this? Because I'm setting out to find these shrines to then do them to get heart containers, and it just takes so long to do it.
It just adds this other trip to another village to find the goddess statue.
Right.
Which is unnecessary.
When you think of Zelda, you think of all the great music in
Oh
all of
my
these
gosh.
games. And in Breath of the Wild, I get what they're trying to do. It's an open world game. I don't keep saying that, but it makes you feel like you are out in the open, in the wild. All you hear is nature sounds and music of 4 notes. And it's so boring for me as a Zelda fan. I know for you, definitely.
As a huge fan of the music, because Skyward Sword, which was kind of the last big 3D game to come out on a console, it had actually a full orchestrated soundtrack right in the game. So you go from that, where it's these live instruments that you could hear in the beautiful soundtrack, and you just come to this really
it's gonna take me so long, one, being on foot, but then me doing that, and all I hear is either just birds chirping or the stupid beeping of a shrine being nearby.
Man. What a sound effect. Yeah.
It's little things like that just make me not want to play the game, and there's so many similar shrines.
Yeah.
You got in there and you're like, wait, did I do this one already? Because it's, you're always getting a ball to roll down a ramp to then land into, a pressure plate so that the door will open. But I did that already. Why do I want to do that again? And I get it. There's so many that you can choose from to make them different. So then why have to be so many? It feels repetitive, and I just wish that sometimes it takes the nuance out of it.
In our time, we've gotten better at fighting, because you got to learn how to flurry rush and switch between your different items and everything, and that gets easier. But what bothers me is I feel like I'm good enough now, but all my weapons keep breaking, and I just it's one hit and you're done from some enemies. So it's just not a forgiving enough game that you even want to get better and keep playing. So it's I'm not complaining that it's hard. I like that it's a difficult game. But again, I think it's hard in the wrong way. I kind of had this problem in the Mario Kart games, where rather than it be a challenge, it's more just impossible. So you end up giving up on so many fun quests because they just put a Lionel there, and they're just so impossible. Yeah. Unless you want to go on a million side quests to get all these really disposable items that'll just break anyway. A lot of the fun of Zelda is not knowing what you're getting into. In each individual dungeon, you have all these different rooms with all these different kinds of puzzles. But with each shrine, you kind of just figure out the gimmick for it, which Sheikah Slate piece am I using, and then from there it's just about figuring out how to do it. So I found that the puzzles actually got way less creative, even though there's they kind of boast this. There's no one way to do it. You can do a million ways, but there's always the way that works best. So it was always more rewarding to me to figure out the right way, rather than in this where you just kind of mess around until it almost happens by accident. So I find that the shrines are such a downgrade from the dungeons.
It makes it less of a puzzle game, in my opinion. It makes it more of just like a trial and error game.
It's exactly what it feels like. Why does this stuff break so
And it's so
easily?
frustrating too, because I keep using the word frustrating because it is. But you'll get this really cool sword or a shield or something from an enemy, and then you're like, wow, this is awesome. I can't wait to use it. And then you go and fight someone later, and then it like you hit them twice, and it's like it's about to break, and then you gotta pause the game to then change your weapon so that you can kind of preserve it. Mm-hmm. And then that doesn't even work because then the next one breaks and you gotta use it.
Because I think that fans of the game, I see a lot in like reviews, they talk about how like the formula is broken or whatever, but I really challenge that. I think there were some games that people like Skyward Sword that people found to be way too linear, but I think like there's a happy medium between that like linearity and then just like complete like open world, just like because it got to a point where there's really not even much of a story anymore because there's these 4 divine beasts. Don't even have to go to them. The characters are only really like kind of they're explained in like flashbacks, and like Zelda's something where I've really come to cherish the story in the game because you play games like Wind Waker and like Twilight Princess, and the story's like everything, and they motivate you to go on the quest because you just want to help people. But in Breath of the Wild, there's no one around to even really help. It just is like Zelda's voice every once in a while. Or like, and why is she British?
You think like, oh, okay, they're gonna give me a mission, I'm gonna go like help them and like something, but they're like, I need your help, and you're like, okay, what? And they're like, I'm gonna die because this guy's right here. Because like they're usually like you see them fighting someone, or like they just fought someone and they're like cowering in shame. Like it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, that part, it is interesting how there are people to interact with, but it just, again, kind of just feels so random and just so, you just kind of come across it and then you do it. It doesn't really add anything to like the game as a whole, I found.
The only people I enjoy interacting with are the guy at the stable and Beetle, because like they're like really the only people that are relevant.
Yeah, because you need your horse and you need to buy some arrows. That's kind of like the only thing you need to do with people in that game. And that feels like such a loss after where Zelda was going with. Like, I really found some of the other 3D games that you were mentioning to be like some of the most emotionally like involving ones. Because, you know, if you just want a fun game, you can go to other places, but Zelda is something that really came to be represented by its story. And I know that's not how the original was, so maybe people want a return to that. But I think without the dungeons and without like that the reward of beating each dungeon and getting a piece of the Triforce, because when you have so many shrines, it just gets so tiring. You don't really feel that sense of accomplishment anymore, like where, you know, you'd beat one of like 8 dungeons. It would be a really big deal. You'd like advance in the quest. But I think with Breath of the Wild, it's hard to like be motivated because there's never anything that really indicates that you're making progress.
It just is lacking Zelda. You know, it is Zelda, obviously. You have the Zelda characters, but it just doesn't feel like a Zelda game. And I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing, because, you know, it's letting the Zelda community, you know, people who are diehard Zelda fans, get a taste of something new.
Something that always made me a little sad was that you'd get a Zelda game you really, really love, and they never made sequels. Like, they made games that were similar. Like, Majora's Mask, kind of like Ocarina. Wind Waker, then on the DS, they made Phantom Hourglass, which is another game you're, like, in the ocean on a boat. Mm-hmm. But it's just that they choose now to continue with the open world game. It just kind of frustrates me. That's, like, the theme of our Breath of the Wild discussion. That, like,
it's not bad, it's just frustrating.
Right, because, I mean, a lot of people love the games, and that's a good thing. But it just feels like, for all this time, when I loved the games that did adhere to that classic Zelda formula, it's like I would just want them to make a game that kept all the stuff the same, with having dungeons and having the items that you get and you get attached to because they don't break, and you have the great story, but then you mix up certain things about like where we are in the timeline and which characters we're with and like where is this in Hyrule. I just think it feels like a lot is being left behind with Breath of the Wild, so it's kind of like a new start.
It's really hard to look ahead because we're at a point where these games have been around for so long now that are they going to just end or are they going to continue, you know?
It's hard to think of Zelda going away, like,
yeah, it is, and it's going to be even
legendary
harder.
It is.
Yeah, it's going to be even harder with Mario as well, you know, like I feel like Mario's never gonna die, but like you never know. Like it's just.
Or maybe the Mario we know.